right, good morning. Committee on Parole is reconvening. We're now at Rapides Detention Center on Thursday, April 25th, 2024. The time is 9:31 a.m. And Mr. White, are there any staff in the room with you? Okay, I'd like them to unmute the microphone and then introduce themselves for the record.
It's Sergeant Morris, Ms. Renanza.
All right, thank you, Sergeant Morris. Thanks for helping us out today. So, Mr. White, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
My name is Gerald White. My DOC number is 317568.
Yes, sir. All right, let me introduce the panel to you this morning. My name is Cheryl Renatza. Mrs. Stapleton is seated to my left. Mr. Freeman is seated to my right. We are your parole panel today, and we're here for a revocation decision. We're going to put a piece of paper up on the a form up on the screen. I'd like you to look at it and review it and verify if that's your signature at the bottom of the page. Is that your signature dated January 29th, 24?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Based on that questionnaire, it was determined at your preliminary hearing you're not eligible for appointed counsel. Are you ready to proceed with your revocation hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to read the allegations against you, after which you'll enter a plea, after each one, a plea of guilty or not guilty, and then Mrs. Stapleton will be asking you some questions about it, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
When we vote, you'll be allowed to make a statement if you'd like to do so. So you're accused of violating the conditions of your parole, specifically condition number 3, and that allegation is you have not been living at the address provided and are in violation of your curfew. You also admitted to not living at the address approved and admitted to living with your spouse at a prohibited address of 6101 North Bolton Avenue, Lot 49, Alexandria. How do you plead to violating condition number 3?
I plead not guilty to violating. I violated my curfew, but not moved.
Okay, we'll get the details in a moment.
Yes, ma'am.
Condition number 7, you continuously lied to agents about your whereabouts and where you were laying your head every night. How do you plead to violating number 7?
I'm gonna plead not guilty, ma'am.
Okay. Then we have number 10, and it says you have failed to make a single payment towards supervision fees since having been released, and you're currently in arrearages of $191. How do you plead to 10?
Guilty, ma'am.
Okay. And last is special condition, which was number 13. And it says you shall follow the sex offender contract. You failed to comply with section 4, number 9, by having social media and using social media for messaging and phone calls through Messenger. How do you plead to violating that special condition?
I plead not guilty to that, ma'am.
All right. Would you answer any questions Mrs. Stapleton has for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. White.
Good morning, Mrs. Stapleton.
Okay, I'm looking at the revocation decision from your officer, and I can see that they document very closely every time that he went to the house to check on you, and then the roommates would say you weren't there, and then finally it was, at an hour that was past your curfew, and you weren't there. So you had roommates also saying you weren't there, and then he did find you living at the home of your wife. So what about that's not true? And who's not telling the truth?
Ma'am, first, about the roommate part, me and my roommates have issues, and which my parole officer knew about the issues that we had. And of course, me saying I passed my curfew, I did violate my curfew a few times, and when he did come a few times, I was at work. And he said from 10 to 6 in the morning, I had to be at the residence. And I didn't know if I was at work to apply to that, because I didn't go to work at 5:30, and I'd be gone, which he had called my boss that morning to talk to her. And she said anytime that I said I was at work, just call her, and she verified, gave him the address where we was at. And then with my wife, ma'am, I never moved my wife. I stayed at 3308 Willow Glen River Road, which I paid my rent, and I was trying to get all my rent receipts up for you guys, but for don't prevail. And Mr. Williams, my landlord, he's in New Orleans. A tree fell on him, to write me a statement and get copies of my rent receipts. Yes, I did visit my wife at a restricted address, and she have now moved. Me and him talked about that, and she have moved, and he had approved that address, so he had no problem with it.
So on January of 2024, it was the offender was currently not home, and the roommates advised the offender was not home all day. Then he checks again, and it was 12:15 a.m. at that same address, and he didn't find him home. And so on 124, so 122, 123, so your parole officer was really trying desperately to see what was going on with this. And so on 124, that's when the arrest was made, because you were not staying at your residence. And that's where they found that you were using a phone for Facebook and Messenger, social media, which is totally prohibited. Do you have an answer to that?
Yes, ma'am, I do. And when Mr. Roman called me that morning, that's where I was at work that morning, which I did visit my wife. My wife is disabled, ma'am. She had a light stroke. She can't use her right side. And so I told him, I went over there and I cleaned her up and I changed it. What my sister used to do, but she was at work and my kids was at school. So I went, I told him, I said I did. She called me, I did, went over there. She needed some of the pens. So I went to the dollar store. I got her some of the pens. I went, I washed up, cleaned up, and I fed her. And that's after I did the little job I did. And I called Mr. Roman and told him I should be at the boarding house between 2 and 2:30. And when I finished, I went to the boarding house. I called Mr. Roman and told him I was at the boarding house. And I told him, yes, I was in Cabana, the prohibited address, sent about my wife. And I did not move to Cabana. But yes, I was in Cabana taking care of my wife. And I phoned him and let him know that. On numerous times I called him and he said, if you have any problem, you have to be anywhere, you call me, let me know. I left a text message. I called him to let him know that I had to go to Cabana and see about my wife.
What about the question I had for you about the social media?
Yeah, ma'am. Go ahead.
Facebook, did you use Facebook and Messenger? Did you do that because that was prohibited?
No, ma'am. See, that was when I got out October the 16th from Carter Correction, and I didn't have a phone. So my wife gave me the phone to use, and she had a tablet at home. She had logged out of her Facebook account, and she had deleted a message off the phone. And when they went through the phone on the porch, and then they hit Facebook, it had Archie White, and it was logged out, and no message wasn't even installed in the phone. She had all that, deleted it, and logged out. And when he said Messenger, when I had talked to him, he said Messenger, and he said it wasn't social media because I wasn't on Facebook. He said it was messaging. I thought you were talking about the rest of messaging through your text on your phone. No, ma'am, I was not on Facebook. It wasn't even my phone. My wife let me use it. She logged all that out and used her tablet.
You wasn't able to join us today, maybe by phone call or Zoom, and corroborate all the things you're saying right now?
I try to have. I'm here with one of the social workers, the guards now. And I try to have them to call my sister and have her to call my wife and have her to write a statement and with a text to him, and he was going to text it to you guys, like my boss did. She dropped a letter off and he said he would text it to you. But I'm sure if he could call her and she could verify that it was her phone, with the account was in Arthur White's name.
And one more question. You were charged with failure to register.
Oh, ma'am, I registered. Yes, ma'am. I was registered with the city and the parish. I had to register twice in 2 locations. One was out by the Air Base Road, and the other was down in Bolton.
Okay, well, I don't have any further questions. I'm gonna pass it to the other board members to do.
Okay, why can't you live with your wife? Is there young kids in the home? Is there daycare around? What's the problem?
Yes, sir. I have a 12 and a 15-year-old at home. And so I had talked to my parole officer and I had told me and him, I had agreed. He said, if you move out of Cabana, the restricted area, I wouldn't have no problem you living with your wife, but you cannot live in the restricted area because it was a trailer park. And I told him that my sister going to take my 2 boys for 3 or 4 months to how it would take too long for me to help my wife rehabilitate herself. And she in treatment, out treatment for her help. And he said he had no problem with that. And he just seen me the other day and say that he checked the address, what she
So
lived at now.
problem is that you can't live with her because of the 12 and 15-year-old, right?
Yeah, yes, sir, correct.
Okay. Are you working? Where do you work?
Yes, sir. I do remodeling work for my I got to do a lot of work for this pastor. And she said, yeah, you have to give a letter. What's the first?
Yeah. We
We got it.
Oh, he said he sent a letter to Miss Betty Williams. Yeah, that's my employer.
Got it.
Yeah, that's my employer, sir.
Okay, and last thing I heard you say, did your wife move or she's still in the same area?
No, sir, she moved. When I got her arrested, and he even told her about the address was prohibited in the trailer park, so she moved on the 29th of January. She would have moved since.
Be prohibited because she got the young kid.
Yeah, and then plus the trailer park. But what we're gonna do is my sister's gonna get the kids. My sister's gonna take the kids and I'm gonna move in with her. So the kids gonna move in with my sister until we can rehabilitate her. And I also have a letter coming to you guys about where the lawyer will send you guys a letter. He says it's up to you guys if y'all permit me to be around my kids.
Okay, we hadn't received that. Okay, I have no further questions.
All right. Anything else you'd like to say, Mr. White, before we vote?
Oh, I have one last, and I'm sorry, Mr. Knotson. With your instant offense, was it children and was it family?
It was my 12-year-old, the Civics Act with my 12-year-old stepdaughter in 2000.
Okay, that's what I need. Okay, thank you.
Anything else you want to say to us?
Yes, ma'am. Like when I was telling my parole officer, I understand the stipulation of my curfew, and me and him had the talking, and he said that he didn't have no problem being with my wife. He said, but it's just the place, the prohibited place that will be. He said, I told him about the kids. We go and stay with my sister. He said he has no problem with that, and he got she faxed him a new address. He went and checked it out. He said he had no problem with that. He said he had told you guys. I mean, well, you all that, not you guys, you all that, and basically, my wife, me and her been together 18 years, and to me, I had no choice but to go help her. She disabled, couldn't help herself, and my sister did her best. She worked 12 hours. She worked a job 12 hours. My brother-in-law worked, so she trying to take care of her and my kids. So my kids will go stay with my sister when I go over there and help my wife. So there wouldn't be no conflict just by the kids being in the home where I was over there helping my wife.
Well, thank you, sir. You ready to vote? We have a motion for executive session.
Second.
And could you do the roll call, please?
GERALD.
Yes.
Steve Freeman.
Yes.
Carolyn Stapleton.
Yes. All right, Mr. White, we're going to be in executive session for just a few moments to discuss confidential matters. Stand by. We'll be right back.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. White, we're back in session. It's 9:48. We are prepared to vote. Mrs. Stapleton will do her vote first.
Mr. White, after careful consideration, you did break the rules, and that's wrong. And so, that's a reprimand, but we're going to vote not to revoke you today. And it's going to be with special conditions that you get an approved address, and also that you get an electronic monitor that will be paid for by the state.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Freeman?
You're receiving a good break here today now. I know that's tough, but you can't stay with your wife if the kids are there. Bottom line in the story. It's the law.
Yes, sir.
So work that out with your probation officer where he can make sure that the kids have left the home. And then, I'm sure he'll approve for you to go live with. But my vote's the same.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. White is also the same. Do not revoke, issue the reprimand and then add the special condition. First, you got to have the approved residence address and then electronic monitoring. And your parole officer will help you with the electronic
Yeah,
monitoring to get that set up.
Yes,
All
sir.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
All right, that concludes our business in Rapides. We're going to sign off. It is 9:49. Thank you, Sergeant Morris.
Thank you, ma'am.